Hi, welcome to Rajan Night. In today's video, we are going to discuss about creating an RFP process. As we all know, whenever we are working on any of the application, irrespective of technology and domain, request for proposal is the basic outline document which gives us a clear information about what exactly the requirement which customer is expecting. This is all something comes under the pre-sales process whenever we are working on pre-sales environment, like expression of interest, request for proposal, request for information, request for quotation. All these things will be involved in it. So people who are especially working in IT, mainly, of course, this is even required and always better to learn even for beginner level people also, but majorly it is useful for the people who are working on senior levels of IT, especially into project management side or maybe into business analysis, or it may be required for the people who are into operations side of software operations, or maybe in sales process and all. So people should know about how this RFP process and how to prepare, right? So uh, how to prepare this RFP creation, right? So how do we require to prepare this, right? So proposal sending, all these things, that's kind of steps and process is what one must be knowing. In regard to that, this video is all meant for that. Of course, for that, I have used a prominent agile project management tool, compact tracking tool, which is called Jira. In this Jira, we have an option to create RFPs, all that. Because this is all something comes under the operations part. So RFP process is what it was. So this is what this video is all about. So here you can see there is an option called RFP creation. So RFP creation, I'm just creating a project because I have taken a project for core banking. Okay, for example, that is what I have taken. Core banking is what assume that core banking is what the solution we are developing for one of our customers. So for that, I've just taken core banking as an example. The core banking is what the example I have taken here. Now, there are different processes which we need to understand, right? So because we need to send the proposals, right? So we need to prepare a few requirements and all everything. So in regard to that, here we need to update different things in reference to the core banking proposal itself is concerned for any request for proposal documentation, because whenever there is a pre-sales team, whenever they are involving in application development, whenever they are working on application development, they need to understand about different areas of request for proposal, where they need to get some idea over what exactly request for proposal was. They need to write down the context of the introduction, right? So they need to know about the scope of work, etc. All that. So there are different sections which will be there in request for proposal, which I may be writing now. The first one about introduction as well as the background part. Introduction as well as the background. Information as well as the background is what the first thing we do, because these are the steps which will be there in request for proposal. Introduction as well as the background of the particular project which customer is expecting us to develop. Assume as it is a core banking application, introduction is what is required. Then next we will be mentioning about the scope of work, right? So the possibilities of developing the project, the scope of work has to be mentioned, because scope, knowing about the possibilities of the work, what is that we are developing, is also one of the key element which we have to be known with. So scope of the work is also one of the key element which we have to be updated. At the same time, we need to mention about the technical requirements, because when customer is expecting us to develop a solution for their project requirements, yes, there are some technical requirements which we have to be considered, because there will be some projects where we have to upgrade. For example, customer want an upgradation of the application from one level to another level. Or else sometimes customer wants some legacy application where they want to transform from legacy to the new application. Or else customer may require us to develop an application right from the scratch, or existing fourth one existing application where they want to make some changes into the existing one. So for everything, there are some technical requirements which we have to understand. So once the scope of work wins, the information will be written over that. We need to write down the technical requirements even. At the same time, we will be required to write commercial requirements also, because commercialities like how much cost, right, etc. All these things are comes under the commercial requirements, budget, right? So sometimes customer will propose us the budget, like some X amount of budget is what we have. So I want project to be delivered in within this budget, right? This is what it was. Sometimes customer will ask us to give us a proposal of the commercialities, depends on the complexity, depends on the business value. Sometimes, right? So different. It will not be the same for all the projects, depends on the customer to customer. All these things will be varied. Next, customer will mention the timelines and as well as the milestone 7. Timelines and as well as milestones. This is also required. Milestones are also required. We need to mention the right. So milestones are also needed, because uh, every project will have different milestones. At the same time, every project will have different timelines. Depends on the urgency of the customer. Whatever the timelines are required, so whatever the milestones to be updated, all these things has to be mentioned over here. At the same time, qualification criteria. This is also required. We call it as qualification criteria. So this qualification criteria can be classified into two different parts. One is technical qualification, second is financial qualification. Means technical criteria and financial criteria. Technical criteria means whoever wants a solution to be developed for their core banking, any customer, any client, any client, expect that people whoever is sending us the proposals, who are participating on the bid, must be technically expertise in developing core banking application earlier. Then only they will advise. Otherwise, there is no point in doing. So qualification criteria is something relating to that technical qualification. Next, budget level criteria. Budget level criteria means organization should have a vendor who is participating in the bidding process should have this much of turnover, right? XYZ, right? So this much of turnover, that organization. So how big the organization and how active that vendor is in application development, usually client wants to know. So qualification criteria we categorized into two different parts. One is technical criteria, second is financial criteria. This is also one of the thing which we have to be done. In connect to that, there is one more criteria, which is, we call it as evaluation criteria. Evaluation criteria we talk about. Evaluation criteria means how are we going to evaluate? Based on the qualification criteria, as a technical and financial and all, this evaluation criteria will also be involved in it. So we need to mention about evaluation criteria, all that. So we need to mention about the evaluation criteria, etc. All that. So all this information has to be updated, because to evaluate the criteria wherein we need to know. At the same time, there will be some guidelines will be given, because this is where we talk about submission guidelines. What are all the submission guidelines do we have, right? How to submit RFP document, all that stuff. At the same time, there must be some information relating to the contact details even, right? So whoever are the contact person, right? So point of contact, right? So contact details, all these things has to be updated. At the same time, whoever is the focal person for participating in the bid, all that stuff, right? So this information should also be mentioned over here, right? So contact details, all that. Along with this, of course, there is an optional point. I can say, if there is any optional sections, which are uh, needed, if there is anything of that sort, this is also one of the key element. So these are the points which will be there for any of the RFP document. Whenever we are preparing a request for proposal documentation for any of the projects and all everything, so introduction has to be mentioned over here. So this is where generally we need to write down the introduction, all that. At the same time, we need to mention about the scope of work, technical requirements, followed by the commercial requirements, all that. At the same time, we must be knowing about the timelines, qualification criteria. How are we evaluating it, right? This is where we talk about evaluation criteria, submission guidelines, contact details like focal person for the bid, optional sections. All this information has to be mentioned for any of the project whenever we are working on core banking RFP process, right? So RFP for core banking. Let me write down this way. RFP core banking, right? So this is what generally an RFP document in reference to the core banking is what it was. So team has to know, whoever is working on the teams and all should know about this, right? So because this is in the initial stage, right? So for example, this is in the initial stage. Let's say that introduction was completed. This we will be moving into the prepared state, followed by this proposal has been sent, or if there is any response received, etc., etc. So those are all the next level steps. But introduction of the background is what we have to update, right? So we need to background the information. If there is any attachments were required further, so all these things has to be mentioned. At the same time, whenever we are talking about the scope of the work, because possibility, that scope can be of anything. It can be timelines, it can be project deliverables, it can be room of adding new requirements to the existing stuff, accessibility of all the necessary resources, available staff, manpower, timelines, budget, all these, right? So scope of the project, possibility of extension of any requirements which we can be added in future, all that. So technical requirements and all that. So this is how generally the steps which normally we follow whenever we are going to prepare and request for proposal documentation. This is all will provide a clear guidelines about before we are going for a bidding process and all. This RFP document and RFP process will give us a clear idea, because this RFP document will have a clear understanding about what is all about. So based on that, we will be preparing the RFP document. At the same time, proposals will be sent, all that. At the same time, we will be knowing about the list of it, right? List of all the requirements. Here you can see these are all the list, because whatever the board I have prepared, right? So I have prepared the board over here, and whatever the information I have prepared, everything you can see it on the list, right? Here you can see introduction, right? Scope, technical requirements and all. And we have to mention the category, which category is this belongs to, right? At the same time, to whom are we assigning this, right? So to whom are we assigned, right? So when is the due date, right? What was the priority? For example, introduction of the background, scope of the work. Assume that scope of the work is the highest priority. This is needed. For example, technical requirements. Assume that technical requirements is the highest priority. Maybe, for example, optional sections, right? So optional sections may be a lowest priority. Contact details are, of course, high priority because they are required. So these priorities can be updated. At the same time, we have to mention the timelines, all that. Followed by this can be adjusted with the calendar here. So here in this calendar, we will be updating all these informations, whatever the informations do we have on particular dates to be mentioned, all that we need to provide. At the same time, we have to mention all the timelines here. So timelines to perform this activity, all these activities and all everything. And if you want to share this information to the respective words, whoever is are in the team, because on the like so sales team, right? I'm talking about it's combination of everything. Pre-sales team. It's not only pre-sales experienced people, even project management team, even people who are is experienced in project management technicalities of the project. At the same time, even senior business analyst, all these people will also be a part of pre-sales team. Apart from the pre-sales team, as core, as separate, I'm talking about. So those people can be added. So those people, for those people, this information can be forwarded to them so that they will see subsequently, they will see it, and whatever the needed corrections to be made, everything will be done. And if there is any pages to be prepared for introductions, all that, we always have a choice where we can connect to Confluence and we can prepare it. And if there is any issues which is to be resolved, right? So all these things and all everything we can see over here. So this is how, and any reports to be generated or any settings to be made. Subsequently, those can be done later on, right? So created versus resolved. How many were created? How many were resolved? So those things can be done sequentially later on. But initially, to start with, we have to create a board. Of course, this is for a summary purposes. I have prepared this. This is a summary which we have prepared. In this board, all this information will be updated. From here onwards, all these will be listed out, and this listed information will be subsequently created. And what are prepared, right? Or what are the proposals we have sent? All these things can be updated over here. So this is how generally a request for proposal document steps, which normally we must be knowing. People who are working in the field of IT, of course, not even non-IT also do that, but in the field of IT, whoever is doing should have a knowledge, especially to the people who are in senior roles or who are in the managerial roles, and who wants to acquire knowledge over this process or who want to get into the management roles and all. So those people should know about this RFP process and all everything well in advance, so that it will be more useful for us to uh, extend our professional expertise and all to the next level. So this is all about this video. If you have any queries, if you have any questions, please reach out to my contact details. Followed by this, if you have any training needs, all that, any training or coaching consulting needs, please reach out to the contact details, which will be posted in below to this video. Thank you.